All right, everybody. It's another Green with Envy Thursday live stream. Our guy, Khari Thompson from Boston.com, is joining us today. We're going to get into putting a bow on the Eastern Conference Finals. We're going to look ahead. Who the Celtics going to play? They're chilling. We still don't know who they're going to play in the finals yet. We'll talk about both teams and what those matchups look like. And then hopefully we'll get a little bit of insight on where we're at with Kristaps Porzingis, talk about what that might look like for him to have a game one return. It's Green with Envy. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another Thursday live stream edition here of Green with Envy. Today we got a full set as always. This is your boy Will. We are checking in. How you doing? How you living? First up, we got my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Menakis. Greg, how you doing today, my guy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I love your energy, bro. You're bringing the A+ energy. You've had some time to recuperate after a sort of stressful Eastern Conference, just like the Celtics. You're chilling. The Celtics are chilling. I'm chilling. How you doing, Chief?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on again. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys.
Hell yeah, man. Always happy to have Khari Thompson, Boston.com, checking in with us as we talked about throughout the playoffs and going forward here. We're going to do our best to incorporate our guy when he is available. But Greg, you hit the nail on the head here. We're chilling. Celtics, they damn well be chilling because we're still waiting to find out who they're playing in the NBA Finals. Celtics are off from an actual game standpoint until Thursday, June 6th. So a week from today will be definitively, no matter what happens in the Western Conference Finals, how it plays out, 5 games, 6 games, 7 games, we'll talk about. It will be game one, Thursday night, June 6th at the TD Garden. It is going down, but before we look ahead, and also for those of you joining us here as this is a live stream, go ahead, get your comments in the chats. We want to hear what you guys want us to talk about. If you have some questions, throw them in there. We're happy to kind of throw those into the mix as well. But Khari, I want to start with you here, man. Let's put a bow here on the Eastern Conference Finals. Celtics wrap this series up on Monday night. As we said, they've been chilling, getting some much needed rest. Joe Mazzulla today talked about trying to find ways to continue to get better, even on the days that they're off and they don't know who they're playing. So it's not exactly as if you can already go in and put that game plan in, despite, Dallas being up 3-1. They still got to close that deal. So it's a little bit of a tricky spot, but Eastern Conference Finals, Celtics sweep the Pacers. Correct me if I'm wrong. You did actually make it out to a few of those games in Indy. Is that correct? Or did you not make it out there?
I was at both games in Indy.
Okay, so give us some takeaways that you have from being there. That's right. That's right. So give us some takeaways from that road trip to Indy and watching the Celtics close it out in games 3 and 4. What stood out to you?
Well, I think the takeaway is that the Celtics can win close games, right? I mean, we hadn't seen any of that before this series. I mean, just so many big plays throughout that series. You think of, Jalen shot in game 1, incredible shot. You think of Drew steal at the end of game 3, way to close it out there, body Nemhard, and then you got the end of game 4, D White coming up big again. Did you guys realize that was the anniversary of the tip-in, and he hits the game winner to send them to the finals?
May 27th, Derek White Day. Derek White game-winning shot day, May 27th. It's official.
Yeah, so that's what we really learned about the Celtics this series. Not only that they could win without Kristaps, which we knew from the prior series, but we can win close games. And part of that's Indy being young, but part of that is the Celtics executing well late.
Yeah, my guy Robbie Hoden for Celtics blog. Robbie, another a step ahead alum, by the way, Khari. I don't know if you have had a chance to link up with Robbie at all.
Hey, real quick, Greg. Are we gonna reach out to Smith and get him to do some paid ads here with Green with Envy, because we're giving a step ahead. We had a shout out with Coach Frank Bennett talking about Deuce being in there. We're giving some love here to a step ahead. We might need to work out some type of little deal here. So maybe we got to reach out to Smith on that.
I'm on a lifetime contract with this step ahead, man. No, but Robbie wrote a great article on Celtics blog. I'm trying to pull it up right now, but I can't find it. Basically talking about the Celtics crunch time offense and how they've kind of bucked the trend of the regular season. They're actually the top rated crunch time offense in the playoffs thus far. They haven't had a ton of opportunities, but they're 4-0 in crunch time opportunities. And they've just been by far the best team in crunch time. So go to Celtics blog, find that article from Robbie Hodin, Hodin. Did a great job breaking down how the Celtics have kind of evolved in this postseason. And yeah, Khari, to your point, man, like the way that they won those games, it made me feel a lot better about this team, where during the regular season, anytime a game was close and the Celtics had a lead or, were trying to come back, I always felt like they probably wouldn't pull it out. And I texted Will during game 4 and I was like, hey, bro, do you feel like we're going to win this game? And like, we both kind of were like, yeah, we feel like we're going to win. Like that belief is now here in my heart. The tension is off my shoulders. I feel good about this team going into the finals. And I think we're ready for whichever matchup we get next. But I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
And I think one of the big things with some of this, clutch stats, you can dig into the stats. And I think the Celtics ended game 3 and 4 on 15-4 runs. I forget different time frames, but 15-4 runs to close out both games. But you think about some of the signature moments and plays, and you have Jaylen Brown shot that you mentioned, Khari, in game 1 to get that to overtime, and then Tatum has 10 points in the OT. You talk about game 3, Tatum had a great all-around game, but really that around the back pass to Al Horford is what you think about. It's that playmaking. It's Al who, Greg and I were watching that game with some Indiana Pacers fans, and early on they were like, we'll give Al every shot. Al knocked down 7 out of 12. So careful what you wish for sometimes, because there is so much versatility. And then, of course, the Drew Holiday steal. Talk about Derek White then hitting the shot in game 4 to seal it. So I think, watching the way that these clutch moments played out for the Celtics was really big, because Greg and I have been talking a lot about all season, what's the identity of the Celtics? I think the identity is their malleability, right? Their ability to kind of shape shift for what the moment needs, that versatility. And when you look at clutch time, and it's all 5 starters have a distinct moment that belongs to them. And this is before we get to Kristaps Porzingis, who we'll talk about. Like, I think that's their biggest weapon versus either of the teams that they play out west, is that they can hit you with a jab, with an uppercut. They can come over the top. They have so many different ways that they can attack you. And we saw that, late in this Indiana series. And, as you're watching it, Khari, since you were there live, let me ask you, especially for, after game 4, what were some of the sentiments that the players were sharing about, being able to perform in clutch time or in crunch time, that they shared maybe either after either one of those games?
Well, I mean, it's great that they won and they pulled off the sweep, but like the sentiment is like, yo, we need to finish this. Like that's what Al told me, because like I asked, what was the difference in emotion, right? Versus last year when D White hit the tip in and you had another game to play, versus this year he hits the game winner and you guys are in the finals. And he's like, what's very different from last year is we're very clear minded about our goal, and like we need to finish this. And that's basically been the Celtics thing. They've been right there years. They just haven't been able to finish. They've been on the 10-yard line of the other goal line. They've been in the red zone for so long, and they keep getting stopped on 4th down. And so this team, they got to finish it, man.
Were there any other players that you spoke with in the post game that had anything kind of enlightening that you heard?
Yeah, I mean, I was asking everyone about Derek, because my piece was about Derek and just like the juxtaposition of those two moments. But I mean, Jaylen was just way more laid back than we normally see him, right? Which is good. Like I liked his energy that whole series. Like he was actually being funny. Like the whole "hang it in the Louvre" comment.
Yeah.
After talking about Tatum,
He had a couple of one-line.
pass,
He had some bars throughout the series.
Yeah, talking about how like TJ McConnell turned into Michael Jordan. I mean, it was fun. But I mean, I think Al's always a good perspective. Drew talking about the pairing with him and Derek is always enlightening. And I think one of the more interesting things that I heard from the guys wasn't even in this series. It was during the Cavs series. When we talked with Jalen just about how Derek and Drew kind of tag team things. Like when one is struggling, the other picks up the slack offensively. And Jalen was like, "There are X factors, and we are really, really tough when one of them is going." We haven't really seen that many games when both of them are going, but they've kind of alternated it, and that's such a luxury for the Celtics to have.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
one. Oh, go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say, it's funny seeing Drew and Derek kind of pick each other up because for so long the conversation has been when one of the Jays doesn't have it going, the other one will step up, right? So we kind of have that in our backcourt and our front court. But the biggest thing for me from that series, guys, is that the Jays average a 30 for 30. Each of
Right.
them averaged 30 points, and we've talked about in the regular season how good they are when both of them score 30 points, and they have a series in the Eastern Conference Finals where they average 30 points. Like, talk about development, talk about reaching your prime. Both of these guys definitely seem locked in. And as you mentioned, like Jalen being comfortable in his skin, making those comments, just really seeming like he's at peace with everything in his career. And it's almost a foregone conclusion that they're manifesting this championship because it's just nothing but positive energy. He had that great tweet that he put out about like doubt destroys dreams or something like that, and confidence builds success. I don't remember exactly what it says, but I think the maturity out of those guys and them understanding the purpose of this season is really what's standing out to me.
I think you just said the key word right there. I think it's a certain maturity level, which I think being relaxed in the moment, which isn't probably always necessarily drawn as a straight correlation to maturity, but I think it is a part of it when you think about all the pressure, all the scrutiny, all the different ways that the media has tried to, wedge their way into like probably the most preposterous thing I think I saw recently was I think it was on Get Up. They were analyzing Jason Tatum's reaction to Jaylen Brown winning Eastern Conference Finals MVP, where it's like, guys, what are we doing? Like, what are we really doing here? So I think the relaxed nature of Jaylen Brown, the maturity that Greg, that you spoke to, of the way that they've gone through this, and speaking to the Al Horford quote as well that you mentioned, Khari, of we know what the end game is here, right? Like we know what all that matters, all the bullshit that we hear on the way up to this championship. It won't matter if we win. If we win, then it's just set in stone. What you're going to see is in the 2023-24 NBA season, the Boston Celtics were the champions. And then all of these stats that people are trying to put pre-asterisks on or question about the net rating, the 64 wins, and, how great their offense, defense, whatever you want to, highlight, like none of that matters. Just none of that matters when you win the championship. You're just going to look at this resume and be like, damn, that was a squad and that was one hell of a season. So I do think that maturity is a very key word when looking at this team. One other quick stat I want to throw out here, Khari, and I'm sure you probably mentioned this in the piece that you did here. Derek White, 4.3 stocks per game in this series. Our guy Wayne Spooney over at First of the Floor tweeted this out earlier, and I was like, oh, that can't be right. Double checked it. That's insane from your point guard, two guard, whatever you want to label Derek White as. 4.3 stocks is just an insane stat to have in a conference finals series. Before we start looking ahead here, any other final thoughts, Khari, that you had or takeaways that you had from this Celtics Pacer series?
Jalen said two more things that I really liked. One, he was kind of funny when he said, "I don't win shit." Like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like, he just wasn't even expecting to win, Eastern Conference Finals. So that was when Cedric
You could see it on his
Maxwell
face
got
too when they announced it. You could tell he was surprised.
Yeah, so that was a cool moment when Max got to yell out his name. The other thing he said that was interesting was like he's like Greg was saying, like he's reached that point where he's like, I just embrace the negativity. He's like, I am who I am, and at this point in my career, I don't care what you have to say. I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna do me, and I'm gonna win. And it's playing. And I'll close with this. The biggest difference between Jalen this year and last year was on that final play when he kicked to Derek. Last year he would have dribbled that off his foot. Like he almost did. Like you saw he had to get real low with that dribble, and it was looking real dicey. But he found a way, and then he made the right read because he also could have went to Tatum on that play, but he chose to find Derek was open, hit the shot in the corner, and nailed it. So that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, Greg broke that play down for us afterwards, where he talked about it being a conscious decision of, all right, we got JT here, and then and then we have Derek White having some technical difficulties here. We'll get Khari back here in just a second, but Greg, you talked about it. He could have gone to JT, could have gone to Derek White. Consciously, it was like, just as you and I have talked about, close your eyes and who hits the biggest shot of the Boston Celtics season. And as much as we love the Jays, and the Jays are going to be, we'll see. We'll talk about this upcoming matchup that is undefined at this point. They're going to play a massive role, but Derek White was always that guy for us and knocked it down. Any final thoughts from you, Greg, here on the Eastern Conference takeaways?
Not really. I'm gonna put into the comments here. I think this just goes out to YouTube. A link to Khari's article that he referenced on Boston.com, breaking down the anniversary of the Derek White miracle. But I just think overall, man, that this team looks ready for the finals. They, hot knife through butter that entire time in the Eastern Conference. So they're ready for the next opponent, and I'm excited to see which opponent it is, man, because that series is not over. There's a world in which those Minnesota Timberwolves could at least force a game 6 tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good transition here, Greg. So we don't know exactly who is going to be coming out of the West. Likely, it looks like it's probably going to be the Dallas Mavericks. They're currently up 3-1 as we're recording. In case you're not listening to the live stream, if you're listening to this on the audio form, you'll know what happened in this game. We don't know yet as we're talking about this. And so it's 3-1 Mavericks, and it looks like most likely they're obviously going to be the team that will come out of the Western Conference as we get our guy Khari Thompson back in here. A little technical difficulties, but we got him back here. So Khari, we're just getting set up here to talk about a little bit of Mavericks and Wolves. So no team, as we all know as Celtics fans, has ever come back from 0-3. Celtics got damn close last year doing it to the Miami Heat. Of course, Tatum rolls his ankle first play of the game in Game 7. We all know the rest. Will the Wolves be the first team to come back? I don't know. I would say it's unlikely, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. They are the higher seeded team. They do have a setup that is conducive to this home game, Game 5. Game 6, you got to go on the road and get a win. Been a lot of road wins in this series already. And then Game 7, we'll be back in Minnesota. So to say they don't have a chance, I think wouldn't be entirely fair. But let's start here, Greg. 3-1 Mavericks. Let's say that there's still a chance for the Wolves to come back. Looking at this through a Celtics lens, number one, I'm sure we all want this series to go 6-7 games, beat the hell out of each other. Let's continue to kick back, relax, chill, and let these guys go to battle. But when you look at Mavs and Wolves, what's your lean on who's the better opponent for the Celtics in the finals?
I think that the Wolves are a bad matchup for the Celtics. I think it would be a really fun series either way. But I think the size that the Wolves have, especially with Kristaps, we'll talk about him in a little bit. He seems like he's going to be ready for the finals. But, in terms of the amount of guys that they can throw at him with Towns, with Gobert, with Naz Reid being a real issue. And then they have the defenders that can go up against the Jays. Anthony Edwards showed throughout the regular season that he can be a dominant defender when called upon. I'm not really worried about Alexander Walker. I don't think he can necessarily guard either of those guys, though he is solid. And then Jaden McDaniels, who's one of my favorite defenders in the league. I think that he's going to give Tatum some problems, thinking back to the finals when he struggled against Andrew Wiggins. I think that's a very similar defensive matchup. And the prototype of guy that can give Tatum some issues with length all around the rim. I think that's a pretty tough matchup for the Celtics. I think it would be a lot easier to go up against a team that has people that you can target, right? Tatum can target Luka. He can target Kyrie. Derek Jones Jr. is their best perimeter defender. He does not have the size to deal with Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum's just going to put a shoulder right through that skinny chest, and he's going to be able to finish at the rim. Daniel Gafford. I mean, it's funny when you think about these guys that we destroyed on the bad teams. When Gafford was in Washington, we killed him. When PJ Washington was, when he was in Charlotte, we killed Charlotte, and now they're on the Mavs. So it's like, are they going to bring all of that baggage from the shitty team to the finals? Who knows? Because the Celtics look at those guys, and I know they respect them as players, but they do probably look at them to some degree and be like, yeah, but you were just on the freaking Wizards, bro.
Khari, what do you think? Who's the better matchup for the Celtics, T-Wolves or Mavericks?
Oh, I think it's Dallas. It's not even close. Just because when we talk about the Celtics' biggest strength, it's their depth, man. Like it's the fact that on a given 5 or 6 different dudes that can take over a game. Dallas has two. I mean, like you know what I mean? Like maybe 2.5 if you count PJ Washington. Like like so if Luca or Kyrie has a rough shooting night, which is bound to happen at some point, like it's a lot dicier. Like they don't have as many dudes. They're great players, but like things are not going to go well even for the greats every single night. And I see Dallas struggling if those guys aren't both going off.
Yeah, I think it's just so funny how much it really is true. Styles make fights, because we've said all season. I think the Celtics might have a Denver problem, but Minnesota, who has kind of the antidote to the Denver problem, was luckily able enough to match up with Denver and take Denver out. And then you get Minnesota and Dallas. And Dallas has a Luka problem that is good as or I should say, Minnesota has the Luka problem that, as good as their defense is, they don't really have a good matchup for Luka. He's too quick for their big guys, and then all of their wings are a little bit too frail. They can't. You need kind of almost like a Lou Dort body type. You need a thicker body type, but also ideally with a little bit of length. And so Minnesota has some guys that are long, and they have some guys that are stout, but they don't really have someone that has both of those attributes that can really try to give Luka a little bit of trouble. And then Kyrie is just, if Kyrie's on, Kyrie's just gonna do his thing and start cooking. And then you look fast forward to the Celtics, and I'm with you guys. Minnesota's the much tougher opponent for the Celtics, just based on their length, the way they match up, the problems that they present, and the counters that go along with it. I just think it's a lot more equal and just a tougher matchup to kind of get through. With Dallas, Greg, you talked about it. Like, it's kind of funny looking at this team, and even the Dallas team 2 years ago was like this a little bit, where it was Luka and Brunson instead of Luka and Kyrie, where they really turned it around defensively. But you look up and down this roster, it's not like they don't have all defensive guys. They don't have a lot of guys that jump off the page to you that you're like, man, this is a really tough defensive team. So maybe that's a credit to Jason Kidd. But it feels like when it comes to the Mavericks, no one has a direct answer for Luka or Kyrie, but the options the Celtics have versus what Minnesota has to throw at both of those guys. You look at Luka, you can throw JB, you can throw Holiday, you can throw Tatum, and then you get to Horford, which is not going to be a good matchup, but it's also not the worst matchup out of what you could have for a big. And then with Kyrie, you'll have the Derek White, you'll have Drew Holiday, and even JB and JT can get in the mix on that with some length, a little bit more strength. So I think Dallas is definitely the way to go as far as, who the Celtics prefer to play. But let me ask you, Greg, is there a little fear of Luka magic? Because Luka would definitively be, I think, in my opinion, as much as I love Jason Tatum, Luka would be the best player in that particular series. I think if it's Minnesota, I think Jason Tatum's the best player in that series. I hope that's not too much of a question, because Anthony Edwards has kind of cooled off from where he started this postseason. But I think if it's the Mavericks, Luka would be the best player in that series. And, Luka's been winning championships since he was in the EuroLeague at 16 years old. Like, Luka is a guy that will certainly be ready for the moment. And as a closer, I think you can make an argument he's probably the best closer in the NBA. What type of level of fear do you have of Luka in that potential matchup?
I think in an appropriate level of fear. It's funny as we're talking, and we're talking about all the ways that the Wolves can't match up with Luka, and the reason is they don't have a ton of clear two-way guys. When they bring in, like with the Luka matchup, I think Kyle Anderson's probably one of their best matchups, but he can't shoot for shit. So when you have him on the court, that affects their spacing. You can't play him with Gobert because then there's no room for Ant, right? They don't have that like classic lineup that they can go to. I think they actually do. I just think it's with Gobert off the court and with Naz Reid and Towns, but then Towns does some goofy shit, so like they have all these ways where they can be good and they can pose matchup issues for people. But when you think about wanting to play the Mavs over that team, it's like, man, do I really want to play Luka over that team because there's a lot of holes in that Minnesota T-Wolves team. But I just think it's the matchup, the styles make fight comment that you made, Will. I just think that if the Celtics are to win a series, it's going to be more like free flowing. And I want Jason Tatum to be at his best. And Jason Tatum at his best means the Celtics are at their best. And I don't think Jason Tatum can necessarily be at his best against the T-Wolves because of the matchup issues that they have for him. But then again, you think back to the regular season game in Boston where Jason Tatum was the best player on the court. So who knows? You know, it's a lot. But back to your original question, Luka, I think, yes, I don't even like saying he's the best player in that series because I think head to head, Jason Tatum has looked better than Luka many times when they've played against each other. Luka can step up. He does have the Luka magic, but Jason Tatum, he raises his level of play when he sees Luka Doncic on the other side of the court, as does Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown abused Luka Doncic during the regular season. He made him touch earth, literally dropped him on his ass, and he went at Luka relentlessly. So I think that the Celtics would welcome that matchup. I think when Tatum and Brown look across and see Luka and they see Big Bro and Kyrie, there's like a level of, we know that we can be better than you, and we're going to have to raise our level to a whole nother level versus the T-Wolves, where I don't think they probably have the appropriate amount of fear of the T-Wolves, but they will have it for Luka, and then I think they'll raise their play because of it.
So, Khari, I want to get your take on Luka in just a second here. But before you do, I want to jump in here with just some of the Jays stats against the Mavericks this year because they're really fun. They're really good. So, in the Celtics' first matchup against the Mavs, they won 119-110. Tatum was 39 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists. Jaylen Brown was 34 points, 3 rebounds, and 4 assists. In a game later in the year, in March, and this is after the trade deadline, so with a team more reminiscent of what they have today, despite their rotations not quite being figured out for the Mavericks. Celtics won this one 138-110, so pretty handily. Tatum goes for 32, 8, and 3. Jaylen goes for 25, 7, and 5. So just to the point that you were saying, Greg, of the way the Jays have approached their matchups with the Mavericks, at least based off of this season, you could dig back further. They've had some pretty epic matchups with the Mavericks over the last few years. Certainly a matchup that the Jays feel like they should be able to take advantage of. Khari, what are your thoughts on Luka? Should that be the matchup for the Celtics?
So you're not going to shut down Luka. I mean, the best you can do is like hope to slow him down. And what gives me confidence about the Celtics is I don't think there's any team in the league that has a better rotation of guards to throw at this guy. Many different looks you can give him on the defensive end. Like, you know, you can put Drew on him. Like, you can, if you want to add a little more physicality, you can put Jaylen on him. Like, you throw a little D White. Like, you might even see some Tatum on him at times. Like, they just have a variety of looks that they can throw at Luka that I don't think any other team has defensively. So that's why I like the matchup for the Celtics.
Yeah, I think either way, both of these teams it'll be a fun series, right? These teams, it's not going to be a cakewalk regardless. And I think probably the biggest thing that we haven't talked about, and we're going to talk about here in just a second, is what type of Celtics team are we going to get? Are we going to get one with Kristaps Porzingis or one without? Because I think, especially if Minnesota is able to somehow pull this off, you just the height and the size of Minnesota kind of scares me in that matchup. Now they have some youth, and Greg, you talked about whatever the hell Karl-Anthony Towns does with some of his fouls. Like, I think some of that stuff has to bite you in the ass at some point. Ant still can make some questionable decisions down the stretch. People get worried about our crunch time offense. The Wolves are on, I think, an even different level of worry when it comes to crunch time effectiveness. So I feel like that would be an issue within itself. But when you look at the Mavericks series, I think the Celtics with just Al Horford, it's still in favor of the Celtics, but it's a lot closer. If you throw Kristaps in the mix against this Dallas team and what he can do to kind of, span out or fan out the Mavericks defense, pull Lively, pull Gafford away from the basket, be able to protect that back line against Kyrie, against the alley-oops that we've seen Luka be able to pull off with Derek Jones, Gafford, and the such. Like, that's going to be a big, big difference on who's available for the Celtics. So let's transition here and let's start talking about the potential return of Kristaps Porzingis. And I know we got a question in the chat here from Laura. Do you think KP will return for game 1 in the finals, and how effective do you think he will be? Khari, let's lean into you here a little bit, man. What are you hearing? Any insights? Because we've seen what Joe Mazzulla will say, and let's be honest, it ain't much. Joe Mazzulla is refusing to give us any insight as to where KP's recovery may be at. What's the latest that you know or have heard?
So one key thing that Joe said today that I thought was a little bit enlightening. Of course, Joe does the whole "I don't know" routine, which I personally find ridiculous. Like, how are you the head coach of the Boston Celtics? You don't know Kristaps Porzingis' status. Like, it's one thing if you don't want, but like you don't know,
Yeah,
really. But
we
anyways,
ain't
I
dumb.
digress. One interesting thing that Joe said is that Kristaps did not suffer any setbacks in his recovery, right? So the reporting last week from ESPN was that Kristaps potentially could have played Game 4, right? And then Shams came out the other day and was like, "There's hope and there's optimism that Kristaps will be ready for Game 1." So logically, if those dudes are to be believed, which I trust their reporting, that means Kristaps is close enough to be able to make a return that those dudes are comfortable saying that maybe Game 1, right? And for Joe to say today that there were setbacks, I think makes it pretty interesting. Will he be 100%? Probably not. I mean, I think they've been shelving him for a reason, but I think that there's a decent chance we could see him Game 1.
It's really interesting seeing like footage of Kristaps. He's walking around in flip flops, and I don't know if you've ever had like a foot or a calf injury, but flip flops not necessarily the footwear that I would choose if
No,
my
Not a lot of
foot was
support.
bothering me. Not a lot of
no.
support, right? So when I saw that and he's walking around with a big smile on his face, he's got a jauntiness to his step. I feel good about Kristaps being back healthy for the finals. And let's be real, guys. We don't need Kristaps Porzingis to play 35 minutes a night in the finals, right? Just having him back for 25 to 30 minutes where it's him and Al splitting those minutes as best as they can. And against the Mavs, we probably don't need to go double big. Against the T-Wolves, we would probably need to go double big, which would require those minutes to overlap some, which then could get a little iffy. But I think if it's the Mavs in the finals, Kristaps playing 25 minutes to 30 minutes a night, that's all we need out of the guy. We just got through the Eastern Conference basically without him. So it's going to be a huge relief just to see that big 7'3" body back there guarding the basket. We've all played basketball. We understand that when there's a big guy behind you, it emboldens you, not only on the perimeter, but just with your confidence, knowing that you got the biggest, baddest guy on the court. He's on our team. It's Kristaps motherfucking Porzingis, man. And I'm so excited to have him back for the finals because this team is destined to win the NBA finals, guys. I really feel it. I believe it. I think no matter who we play in the finals, the Celtics are going to come out on top because it just feels like their year. Everything is breaking the right way for them. And I think that when they, at the end of the day, 3 weeks from now, we're all going to be here celebrating.
Yeah, it feels
I
that
like
way,
your
man.
biggest-
I'm right there with you. Go ahead, Khari.
I like your energy, Greg, but biggest, baddest. I don't know if that fits Kristaps Porzingis' player profile. We can say tallest, lengthiest. We can say nice, finesse, big, who can add some rim protection because of his length. But we're not talking about the Joker here, man. Like, I'll respectfully push.
When you think about, I'm just saying, if you go up against the Mavs and it's Derek Lively or it's Daniel Gafford, Kristaps Porzingis was the biggest, baddest guy in the Wizards, and they played together.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, Greg and I have been big proponents of like part of the Luke Cornett effect is like he's just fucking 7'2". Like just having someone who's 7'2" out there, like kind of changes the idea, even though it's to a lesser extent when you have, a Kyrie or whatever. But when you're thinking about throwing that lob pass and, let's say you have some Derek White, who not the greatest example because we just talked about all the blocks he gets, but you're trying to get that lob pass up. You got to feel like I got to throw this up a little higher. Maybe that throws off your trajectory. That throws off the way that you're thinking about going about, your business because you have 7'2" Luke, but now it's 7'3" Kristaps. And, I was kind of thinking as you were pushing back on like being the biggest, baddest dude, that was actually KP's, like when he was with the Knicks, he was a bad dude. Like that was, he had that nasty to him. we haven't really seen that, and I doubt we're going to see that returning from an injury. But I have been always wondering if we'd get a little bit more of that nasty KP that we kind of got in New York. But anyways, that just kind of made me think about like that was kind of his initial indoctrination into the NBA was like, damn, where's this dude from? He's from Latvia out here with that snarl and just like hyping everybody up, talking shit. And like since injuries, he's kind of, you know, had his own maturation that I think he's taken that out of his game. I don't think he can do it that same way that he did when he's younger. But the biggest point that you made, Greg, is that he's not needed for 35, 40 minutes. Like I think that's the key point in all this is that if he's playing 20 to 30 minutes, like Al Horford played 35 minutes per game in those 4 games in Indy. He went over 40 minutes twice. We saw in game 2, and now it's not going to be every other day minus between games 3 and 4. So that will help Al's energy and you know, preserving him for the long run. But we saw in the Indy series, I think he played 24, 25 minutes in game 2, had his best game of the series in game 3. So we've seen what energized Al looks like, right? And so now instead of having to figure out, is it O'Shea Brissett? Is it Luke Cornett for a few minutes? What can we get out of Tillman? And if you just erase those 3 and you throw in 20 minutes of Kristaps Porzingis, with even if he's just spacing the floor shooting, you know, he's definitely going to be a little bit of a liability and drop on defense, but he'll also be able to protect the rim a little bit. Like that's going to make a really big difference for this team. And so I can't say that it's with Kristaps. I feel like there shouldn't be a way that the Celtics, especially versus the Mavericks, don't come out as NBA champions. But if he's limited or can't go, I do think it's a little bit closer of an even playing field when you look at Dallas and you look at, you know, what the Celtics will have.
Yeah, and I think with Kristaps, I mean, let's just take it from him himself. He tweeted out that he appreciates all the support. It was in Latvian, but you can hit translate. And he basically said that he's gonna be back. You know, he's gonna be back for game 1 of the finals, and he's ready to go. So, you know, who better to trust than the man himself?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this, Khari. Let's say, you know, because we're expecting KP to come back. Let's say he doesn't. Let's say he doesn't come back, and it's the current Celtics that we've had throughout most of the playoffs without KP matched up against, let's just say the Mavericks for now, because they're up 3-1, just to keep it a little bit more simple. How does that change your equation on how you view that matchup of Celtics versus Mavs? Like, does that make this more closer to a toss-up series, or do you still feel confident that that's a series the Celtics should come out as champions?
They still should come out as champions because the reality is their best player is 6'9", borderline 6'10". Like, you know what I mean? Like, and he's a force on the boards. Like, I think you got to look at the stats. Like when Tatum counts versus when he doesn't. Like, Celtics are basically undefeated when he grabs 10 or more. Like, you know, I like the fact that they can set the tone on the boards, and even their small guys are like strong. Like, you know, like Drew Holiday is built like a strong safety. Like, he's not a little weak little guard. Like, he's Drew Holiday. Like, you know, so I think this, even the small ball looks were interesting because it worked. Like when they first threw Brissett in there as a small ball 5, Pacers were like, what's this? And like Miles Turner kind of forgot that he was 6'11" and had a huge size advantage. And like, obviously they figured it out in game 4 and thrashed the Celtics inside. But like, you know, you throw a little wrinkle in there every now and then, you might be able to catch a team off guard. So, you know, I don't love that as like having that as a go-to strategy because like ultimately Al's not going to be able to play the whole game, at least and be effective on both ends of the floor. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to go with Cornette or, you know, Brissett or, you know, occasionally Tillman. But I think you can survive. You can get by with it. And I mean, probably better than survive at this point because they're 12-2. Like, you know, it's been wild.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know what else the Celtics could have done in this run despite all the coverage. You know, going 12-2, winning a lot of games by double digits, then winning a lot of tight games with some of the best numbers. It's really tough to think about what else this team could have done up to this point. But Khari, you know, until we know who the Celtics opponent is, it's kind of hard to really set the scene for the NBA Finals in the appropriate way. But let me ask you, man, as someone covering the team day to day, you know, we have another 7 days until the Celtics, you know, tip off in the NBA Finals. Maybe we'll know tonight who that opponent is. Maybe we won't know until end of this weekend. So, as someone covering the team, what the hell does that look like for the next week as far as what you're doing, what the team's doing? Give us some insight into that.
They're practicing all this weekend, so we'll have availabilities. Joe talked today. We'll get more players tomorrow and Saturday. I believe Sunday is an off day. We also got the finals media day coming up early next week, so that'll be fun. But for us beat writers, I think it's really project time, right? This is that last week to get all your features and your picks and your locker room pulls done before it's go time for the finals. So it's time to pump out some good work.
Yeah. If are you going to be traveling on the road with the team for the finals, regardless of where it's at?
Yeah, the Globe is sending me, man. I'm backing up Adam and Gary, so I'm looking forward to that. I've never been to Dallas, so I'm really looking forward to it either, honestly. So it'll be a new place either way.
Well, if it ends up in Dallas, I'm trying to make my way up there for Game 4 Friday night. So we'll have to link up either Friday or Saturday and catch up in person if that does happen, Khari.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's go.
Let's do it. We'll make it happen here, man. But I think that's going to do it for this episode because we got probably at least 2 to 3 more previews coming for you guys before we actually get to tipping off next Thursday. So we'll have more content coming your way. Khari, any specific articles or projects that you have that are going to be publishing here that you want to shout out or give some love to?
I'm trying to see what I can give away here because I got a couple of things in the work that I'm not trying to have anyone
give us your best tease, Khari. What's the best? We're putting you on the spot here. What's the best tease that you can give the listeners?
I've got a feature on a member of Celtics I got a feature on someone Celtics adjacent. It's not a player, but it's someone who if you go to the games, you know who this person is. So a little deep dive into this person's backstory.
I like it. Little mystery. Make sure you guys are locked into our guy Khari's content here so you can figure out who that mystery feature is on. And then, Greg, before we get out of here, give some love to the music behind the scenes here of Green with Envy. That is Black Sheep Optimists. I know that you guys have a new summer single dropping. So give us, as listeners, the details and info of where they can find, subscribe, and add to their playlist.
So we have a new song coming out on the first day of summer. So June 20th, the song is appropriately called Feels Like Summer. Very inspired by Anderson .Paak, a little bit of Bruno Mars in there. Little bit of Chance the Rapper type vibe in there, big brass section. So it's got a really great live energy, so there's live horns on there, there are live drums on there. My man Dave, who's the producer, rips every instrument except the horns. He's a beast. So make sure that you are adding that, pre-saving that. I'll put the link is in the YouTube description. It's in the podcast audio description. So just click that link and you can pre-save that song, and anything that you can do to support would be really appreciated. I do the pod, I do the music. One of these days, one of these things is going to just completely take off, and it's going to be on top of the world one of these days. But I appreciate it, man. I kid, but I just like any support that you guys can provide. Word of mouth is very much appreciated.
Yeah, appreciate everybody for tuning in today and listening, whether it's on YouTube or whether listening to us on the audio format, wherever you listen to podcasts. We always appreciate it. We got more content coming for you leading up to the finals. Celtics, June 6th. That will be game 1 at the TD Garden. We'll have more coverage for you leading up to it. Thank you, Khari. Thank you, Greg, as always. And we will catch you guys later. Peace.
It feels like summer, baby. Oh, mama, feel like summer. New season got me seeing new colors. So fly, the sky will kiss you. Lips so smooth and miss your issues. Oh, mama, feel like summer. New season got me seeing new colors. Oh, my, I'm slipping into white lies and time to miss you. Now you're 3 shots deep that you chase with the Croy. You're looking at me while you're making that noise. I've been trying to stay clean.